All right. So my first question for you would be, how did you get the job on Springer?
So I owned a gym, a town over from where Springer was being recorded. And one day we had someone walk in. Everyone was kind of like, "Whoa, who's that?" Like real interested in this guy. And I'm just a meathead working out. And um, I go over and introduce myself. I was one of the owners, so I introduced myself. The guy was interested in training. Turns out it was Steve Wilkos. So I got to know Steve over the course of a year or two. His wife as well. His wife was the executive producer of both his and Jerry's show. Um, and they were just saying that they were looking for a security guy, that kind of like a younger guy, and asked if I was interested. So initially, I went on Wilco's and did security for Wilco's, and it was rough. They cover some real rough content on there, stuff that really it wasn't like it would bring you down some days. I don't know how Steve still does it, but so they were like, all right, well, why don't you try Springer? And I went on Springer, and obviously the content covered on Springer is not quite as serious and not quite as rough. So one thing led to another, and I ended up doing security for Springer. So
That's awesome. I don't actually remember seeing you on any of the Wilkos episodes. Or did they ever air?
I'm sure they did. I wasn't staged, so I was able to sit down. I was, just kind of taking it all in. I think I maybe did a week's worth of taping. So was that 5 episodes? So it wasn't anything crazy, but yeah, I was just, like I said, they were covering some content that I was like, oh, I don't think I want to hear about this every week.
Well, that's what Jason was saying when I talked to him. He said that he really just did not like doing the security for Wilkos. He would do it sometimes, but he really didn't enjoy it because of the same reason you said. It's just too much heavy content.
It was, and it's stuff that like especially Jason's got kids. It's stuff about taking advantage of kids and sexual abuse, and if you're just not built to be able to take that in and then leave it all there, it takes its toll. So I did that, and I was like, whoa, that was deep. Went home, thought about it, and I was like, I don't know if I want to hear that every week. That's rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually went to a taping back before COVID started, and same thing, molestation case, and it took everything in me not to rush the stage myself. I was like, I want this guy out of here. Like, I was like, I told my girlfriend, she was with me. I said, I don't think I want to come back to any of these. I miss Springer. Of course, Springer had ended at that point, but I said, I wish that it was still going on so I could at least go and have some fun.
Yeah. Springer was a different beast. There's nothing like it, and it's. Doing security for it was completely different than doing security for Wilkos. So,
did it ever get too serious with a fight with like a guest or anybody from the audience rush up, or you ever have to take someone backstage?
Several times. There was quite a few times where guys or girls they just wouldn't let up, and you got to take them backstage and calm them down, and in terms of people rushing during like the question and answer portion, you get some guys that were feeling real tough that day, and they would rush the stage sometimes. But we were always ready for it. We always knew, that was a possibility. So if you ever looked at the way we were set up, Jason was sitting in front of me. I was in the back, and I was always keeping my eye on the audience. And then we had 2 people on either side of the stage as well. So we always knew that was a possibility. And, and the producers were very stern about that. They said, listen, that could happen and it can't happen. So you got to make sure it doesn't happen. So we always knew. But yeah, there were times where that happened, and we stopped them. And there's times where it would get way too serious. People just wouldn't stop, wouldn't let Jerry talk. You got to take them backstage, calm them down. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes they're just done for the day, right? You're just, if you can't let Jerry talk during Jerry Springer talk show, you can't be on it
And
anymore.
beyond.
So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you guys all like work pretty well together, at least what I saw when I was at the show myself. But I've been watching for years, and yeah, I mean, it's very, very rare that I've ever seen an audience member actually make it on the stage, make contact without getting slammed. I saw one recently where Chris slammed a dude like who tried to rush the stage, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Like,
Chris was a big boy. Yeah, in all my time. So when I first started with Springer, we would tape Mondays and Tuesdays. So we would do 3 shows on Monday, 2 shows on Tuesday. And when I first started with Springer, I was just doing Monday because I owned the business. I was like, I don't know what this is going to do to my business, right? Being on a show like that. And then the guy that was doing Tuesday, who was also a trainer out of my location, he kind of faded off and said, it's not for me. And so I took up his 2 episodes on Tuesday. So I think the first year I was only doing Mondays. But in all my time, no one ever made it to the stage. We always were watching. They always joked because, I was pretty quick. So they would always be like, oh, you get the guys going to the stage. And, but yeah, I don't think we ever saw someone get to the stage. No one ever got to Jerry, nothing like that. So we kept it pretty safe.
now, was the guy who was the other trainer, was he the one who would like football tackle the guests? Am I thinking of the same guy?
Probably. He's a big guy, real strong guy. He had the long red hair.
Yeah, that's him.
And yeah, he was, that there's a certain art form. And I learned this mostly from Pete. Pete was the master of this, right? You get in between and you separate them, but you can't just pin someone down, right? It's a show. They got to be able to talk. They have to be. And Pete was the master of it. And so I kind of learned from watching Pete and this other guy, not so much. He kept everyone safe, but like you said, he would just tackle them.
Yeah, it was really funny. And it definitely stood out because, like you said, Pete had a rhythm. You did, Jason as well. The guys that had been there for a while. But yeah, I definitely noticed because I was like, oh, this guy's like thinks this is football or something, What was the worst injury that you had working on the show?
Geez, I had a few. I'll get banged up. I think I had a slight tear in my meniscus. I did break a finger. And I did tear something in my shoulder. I still remember the guy dove in to try and get by me. And, I wasn't the biggest guy. I was strong and I was kind of big, but there were people that were coming on the show where I was like, God, this is going to be a workout, and the guy dove to get by me and I got him under my arm, like a guillotine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the jiu-jitsu. And I went like this to throw him off of me. And I remember hearing something in my shoulder went and I was like, oh no. But you couldn't be like, ugh, and then run off stage. So I waited till after and I had like some limited motion in my shoulder, but ended up healing up. So it couldn't have been too serious. It was like maybe 3-4 weeks where it was bad and a certain range of motion, I would feel it, but wasn't too bad. And then I broke one of my fingers. I can't remember what hand, but you just taped it, what can you do? So
that's what all the white tape that I would see on the guy's fingers on occasion would be.
So if we had our fingers taped, it's we either sprained it, even if we jam it. It hurts because a lot of the times we're grabbing people by their shirts like that. So that's a lot of like grip strength. But yeah, my wrist was always taped because I had something torn in that from that predated Springer. But anytime my fingers were taped, I think I probably had maybe a month or 2 where my fingers were taped. And that was because I like broke part of my finger. And I was like, what can you do?
Right. So, yeah, it's part of the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a guest that stood out in your mind as the most memorable, that left like an impact on you?
Yeah, I got a funny story for you. So whenever anyone sees me and they say, "You did what? What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you?" And I always tell this story because looking back on it, I can't help but laugh. So this is my first time being number two, right? That's how we always referred to it. Pete was number one, Jason was number two, I was number three. When Pete got injured, Jason was number one, I'd be number two. That's just how it worked. Number two's job was to keep Jerry safe unless, they were needed. As soon as I were to rotate off of Jerry, whoever was number three would rotate onto Jerry, right? Number one goal, keep the guests safe, make sure the show goes on, and make sure no one touches Jerry. So I'm used to just protecting Jerry when I'm needed, right? Every now and then I would have to jump up and there's some big guys, maybe we'd have to take two people to rip them off. And the producer, this is my first time going on stage and actually being one of the guys, being number two, not being an assistant to Jason and Pete, but actually being part of the solution. So the producer was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, the guy that's backstage right now, he's saying some pretty crazy stuff, and he just got out of jail." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" Yeah, he just got out of jail. I'm sitting there, I go backstage and I'm like, all right, how bad can this be? I'm pretty strong. I'm 6'3". I'm pretty big. At the time I was probably 240 pounds. I was pretty solid. It's like, this can't be too bad. I'll just pin him down. I'll do what I gotta do. This guy comes out, and I'll never forget it because I'm like, how this won't be too bad. I guess someone was sleeping with his girlfriend while he was in jail, if I remember correctly. And the guy doesn't even have eyebrows, right? His eyebrows are shaved off, and he's got the words "Thug Life" tattooed instead of eyebrows. And I looked over at Jason. I was like, fuck, sorry for swearing, but I'm good. This is going to be crazy. The guy jumps up onto, I was pinning him down, doing everything I could. First of all, I'm about to puke because I'm so nervous. It's my first time on stage, actually doing something. The guy is just beating the crap out of me, jumps up on the stage to try and jump over me. I catch him and I'm throwing him off me. It was the wildest thing. And it was my first actual show on Jerry Springer. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was like, what the fuck did I sign up for? I made a mistake. But everything else was relatively tame. There were people that didn't, guests that I remember because they maybe didn't like me. Yeah. I remember one girl, I don't even know if this ever aired. One girl got really upset that the way I was separating them, there was just one girl was bigger. So when I was absorbing their charge, she was getting a little closer and she was able to land a shot or two on the other girl. Yeah. And the girl just turned around and punched me square in the face. Holy shit. And I was like, I didn't know what to do, right? Your first instinct when you get hit is whoa, okay, we're fighting. Right. It's a girl. So I look over at the producer what the hell am I supposed to do right now? And I end up picking her up, throwing her backstage. I said, what the hell are you doing? Why are you hitting me? So I always remember guests like that, the ones that gave me a hard time, or Thug Life. Because just those, I always remember just being what the hell did I sign up for? Well, now I'm getting punched in the face. What the hell?
I want to find this episode now. I don't know. I'm not sure I remember this one, the Thug Life guy.
Oh, yeah. It was funny. I remember him jumping up on one of the poles and trying to jump over me. And I caught him. I'm, what the hell is happening?
Did you ever have any fans that got a little too crazy, that noticed you on the street or afterward?
Or I think I'm a people person, right? If someone ever comes up to me and they're like, were you on Jerry Springer? The first thing I say is why the hell are you watching Jerry Springer? Just like Jerry said, this is dumb. That's stupid. but I like it, right? Like if someone ever comes up to me and says, "Hey, were you on Jerry Springer?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I'll talk with them for a couple minutes, depending if I'm in a rush. But probably the craziest was, um, I was over in London with my now fiance, and we went to a bar, and the guy that was doing security at the bar was like, "Are you from Jerry Springer?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, why do you know that? He like bought us around. He was super nice, but like, you just don't expect that, right? Like
Right.
the way we always saw it was like we knew we were on TV, but we were just there to keep things safe and not let it get too out of hand, and we would get recognized in the streets. People in Stamford, when Jason and I would go get lunch or something, people would be like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And come run over. But no, nothing crazy, nothing bad, nothing negative.
Well, that's good. I mean, I've always heard. I heard from Pete. I've heard from everyone. I've heard that Jerry's like the best boss in the world.
Oh yeah.
I've heard that he's like awesome to work with. Was everyone in the security crew, were they all really tight, or was there ever any problems with you got more airtime than me or anything like that?
There was never any of that. I mean, by the end, like if Jason was going up and he was like, "Man, I think I tweaked my knee. Can you take number one for the rest of the day?" The way that Jason and I and whoever was three, whoever was four, right? We the way we all worked were just as a team. That's I'd say, not doing it anymore. That's probably the number one thing you miss. Jerry was awesome. Jerry was always considerate. There would be times where like something happened on the show and we'll go out to dinner after and Jerry will be like, "Hey Dan, I saw that," and he'll bring it up and kind of poke fun. Like he's just super sharp guy, super funny guy, super kind and generous. And that extended for most, the security guys, we all had pretty thick skin and you kind of have to work in TV, but we would poke fun at each other. But at the end of the day, if I saw someone was like intentionally going after Jason, like I'm gonna go in there and get him. Like that's the way we worked. We all understood our assignment. We all knew that we had to get each other's back up there, and to a certain degree, you have to trust the person. So I became real close with Jason when I was his, when it was him and I doing stage, just because you have to, right? He has
Right.
to know that if he's in a bad situation, that within a second I'm there to help him out, and vice versa. So yeah, that we became like and the camera guys too. The camera guys were hilarious. So we all became like a little family. So when the show ended up getting canceled, it was kind of like a sad day for everyone.
Well, how was it when Pete left? I know you worked with him for a little bit and then he left the show. Was it tough adjusting since he'd been on the show for so long?
Uh, yes and no. So Pete and I became pretty good friends too. We still reach out every now and then. Same with Jason. Um, it was definitely weird, but the way that the security team was designed was if one of us missed, right? If Pete just got food poisoning, the show had to still go on. So the
Yeah.
way the security team was designed was kind of a next man up thing, right? If Pete missed, then Jason was the next man up, and that means I take Jason's spot, and we keep rotating, and So yeah, it was definitely different without Pete. I think he brought a lot of kind of a unique personality, especially I'm from Connecticut, right? So the way that Pete and Jason worked, I mean, even their accents, right? Everything about it was different from what I'm used to.
Right.
Um, and I think they brought a pretty unique flavor to the show. So when Pete left, yeah, it was definitely different, but at the same time, from an operations standpoint, no, right? We just rotated and we kept going. From a man, this sucks because Pete's not here standpoint, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was just really unfortunate what happened to him. He was telling me all about that, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
But you guys definitely like kicked ass those last few years. Like I would always it's always funny too to watch clips and the guest will say something and then you and Jason just can't help but crack up at what they say. Like there's no way of hiding it.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of viral clips like going around where the comments are like the security guy is just laughing at, and I'm like, I couldn't help it,
Yeah.
like it was funny. A lot of the times I would look at Jason and just start laughing. He'd start laughing, and it could be the most serious content. But if Jerry cracks a joke and we think it's hysterical, like we're gonna laugh. We could be
Yeah, you can't
literally in
help
the middle, like people are throwing punches right by our face, and we're laughing because Jerry made a joke. So
Yeah, he was always good about doing that.
yeah, yeah.
So how did you find out the news that the show got canceled?
We had heard rumors. We weren't sure really, and like I said, for security, we pretty much just stuck together. So we'd go out to lunch together, and with the camera guys sometimes. But we had heard news that it was a possibility that we hadn't been renewed, and when you don't get renewed, it's like the rumors start going, and then they did like a big they called everyone together right after lunch, and we kind of knew then. So, for me, I was upset because that it became just what I was doing, right? Monday and Tuesday, it became like part of my who I was, part of my identity. I was the Jerry Springer security guy, right? But you also you made a lot of friends doing that, and I knew that it's going to be very difficult in terms of like as a job. Like I still had a business, so I wasn't like super stressed about the money. But there's people that was their job, so we were all pretty upset about it. I think a lot of people were pretty shook about it. For me personally, I was just more disappointed that that's like, that show is a legacy. That is Jerry's a legend. Like you just you wanted him to go out on his own terms. And then he did Judge Jerry, and Jerry's a hustler. He's going to keep doing stuff. So,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it sucked because, for example, Jason became a real good friend of mine, but he's in Chicago. I'm not going to be able to see, maybe once a year we end up seeing each other, but that's it. So
I'm gonna check out his boxing gym. He's got a real successful gym going over there.
no. So actually I'm opening up, it's more like classes. He's actually teaching people to box. I'm opening up like classes in strength and conditioning, and it's a boxing gym. So
That was actually going to be my next question. What are you up to these days?
yeah. So, after Springer, I got into some like sales stuff. I ended up leaving the gym industry for quite a few years. Did some sales stuff, and that slowed down and during COVID, right? So during COVID, all the gyms around here closed. People weren't buying quite as much because, everyone was like, will I have a job tomorrow? So things kind of slowed down for me. Sometime in COVID, I got another sales job that, was pretty good to me and I enjoyed. And they ended up leaving the state of Connecticut. So did like a brief stint of like, the COVID blues where you're waking up and like by 3:00 you're like, I should have a beer,
Yeah.
just like everyone. And like a month or two later, I stumbled on this job that I have now, which is a general manager for, like I said, a boxing gym, like boxing, strength and conditioning. So we're working hard. We're trying to pump out 2 locations at once. One of which is in Stamford, which is where Springer was taping. So, I'm keeping busy. Like I said, I'm sorry that this ended up getting put off so long. I know you reached out to me a while ago, but I'm glad I could fit it in because I'm just scrambling around trying to figure out which way is up right now.
No, I totally understand, and I really appreciate you making the time to do it. I definitely I come up to Stamford. I come up to the New York area about 3 times a year. Girlfriend's from Long Island, so I definitely like to stop by Stamford sometime
Yeah,
and see your new gym when it gets up and going.
absolutely. Yeah, just let me know.
I actually left out another question that I have here on my paper. How did
Okay.
your family feel about you being on Springer?
So when I initially like called to tell them, they were all like, "Whoa, okay, that's pretty cool." Um, I have two brothers, one of which works in the medical field, and when he would do rounds, a lot of the older patients would be watching Springer, so he'd be able to be like, "That's my brother," and it was good, So a lot of my family enjoyed it. Like a lot of my cousins, they all were like, "Whoa, that's my cousin." My dad would watch it all the time. My mom wasn't a huge fan of the content, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I think everyone was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool! Like, what a unique opportunity." And for me, that's exactly how I thought of it too. I'll be honest, when I was like getting injured and busting my knee, breaking a finger, and um, I was like, "Why the hell am I doing this?"
Right.
But you really, not to overstate our role as security, but that's part of history. Jerry Springer Show is a historic, TV program, and to say like, hey, yeah, I was on it for the tail end of it, like, still pretty cool. So,
No, it is. I
uh,
mean, you guys are stars. You guys are the stars right up next to Jerry, as far as I'm concerned, because
come
you
on,
guys, the fights come with the show. Why do people don't watch to listen to the stories? They watch for the
yeah,
fights. Who's that right there when every time a fight comes? Security. So you guys are right up there.
no, thank you. I maybe overstated, but I do appreciate it
No, I
nonetheless.
know. I wish I could have done that job. Honestly, like I always wanted to try it out, but I missed my calling.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah. So like I said, I really appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks, man.